and welcome to Business Talk, brought to you by the Sharonville Chamber of Commerce. I'm Britt Scarce with Emory Federal Credit Union. I'm your host, and today here in studio we have Karl Ulrich with Sebaly, Shillito Dyer and Pandy Pridemore from The Human Resource USA, here to talk to us about bring your own device policies at work. Karl, Pandy, welcome to the show.
Britt.
Hi, Britt.
So, can I tell my employer that, hey, I know you offer, a computer and everything when I come to work for you, but I just want to use my own. Can I do that?
Sure, you can. Now the question is, will the employer will they allow you to do that? That's the real question. So, it's sometimes less expensive for the employer to allow employees to use their own equipment, but there are a lot of issues associated with that.
Now, can the employer say, hey, we don't offer these, but you kind of need to have a computer in order to, to do your functions here at our facility? I mean, can they require you to go buy your own?
They can't require you to do, buy your own, but anybody who's doing business should understand that's the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. And there are so many reasons why they want to do that. They want to have the employee use their own equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're not talking Game Boys here. We're talking cell phones, we're talking laptops, we're talking iPads. What am I missing?
Yeah. So do we have some employees that say, hey, I don't want to carry two cell phones, so you need to be able to just put the my work email and everything on my current phone.
Well, I like that. He went right into the email because remember, cell phones are not just cell phones.
Yeah.
They're also cameras.
Yeah.
Computers. I mean, that's a very, very versatile piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And I would tell any company or business owner that's even thinking about this, understand your risks and do the pros and cons.
Okay.
Two cell phones are awkward, but what control do you have over the individual who's carrying his cell phone and answering it, both ways?
Yeah.
I mean.
Yep. I'm going to take the employee side on this.
Okay. Okay.
So my employer comes to me and says, all right, you have a cell phone. We're going to need you to use your cell phone as part of your work. You're going to need to. We're not going to issue you a new cell phone. It's going to be your cell phone, but we want to, or your laptop or your computer, but we want to load our software on your equipment so that you can use it for work.
Yeah.
I'm the employee and I'm thinking, all right, well, if I want to work here, what choice do I have, right? So I bring my equipment in and I turn it over to the employer and they load up all the software on my equipment. But meanwhile, I have, my own personal emails. I have my own personal photos.
Files.
I might have documents that I create, my own tax returns, my personal tax returns. I use computers for a lot of personal things.
Yeah.
But I also have an employer telling me that all this employer stuff on my laptop or my cell phone or my tablet has to be available to them whenever they want to see it.
Yeah.
So now I'm worried that if I have to turn all that over, are they going to get into my personal life? How do I draw that line?
Right.
It's a real privacy concern for most employees, and I think it's a fair pushback. You want me to use my own equipment? How are you going to keep my personal stuff separate from the company materials?
Right. And my concern as the employer is, wait a minute, what if a contract gets sent to his personal computer and he saves it? Or what if my pricing lists are on his personal computer and he saves it? Or what about my client lists? Or any other information that I consider to be non-public, proprietary, confidential, and we don't strip that down, or he doesn't erase it, or he's tucking and hiding.
Yeah.
That could be a serious issue for me.
Sure.
And I don't know how long he's going to stay with me.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea what he's putting on there, nor do I know how long and loyal he's going to be.
Now, it seems to me, though, that it just makes more sense for an employer if they require you to have a computer, that they purchase you a computer, and it's a company computer, and they can track it, and they can demand, that it only be used for work and that sort of thing. To me, that's much cleaner.
Well, remember, there's desktops, and then there's laptops.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a pharmaceutical client who said, keep your work on your desktop, but the employees would use the USB ports, and they would just carry their work on their USB ports. Well, who was collecting these?
Yeah.
And where was this information going? Because most likely they were downloading it onto the laptop
Right.
or to their home computer so they could, and we're thrilled that they were working, but at the same time, that information is just all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous for the company.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm the employee, I get a laptop or a tablet or a cell phone from the company. We live in a real world here. We're not in a situation where we can necessarily put that away at the end of the day. I might need that laptop to send a personal email to my friend on Gmail, or I might need the tablet to access a personal item or take a photograph with my cell phone. There may be times when I have to use that for personal reasons. So from my perspective as an employee, I'd like a little bit of flexibility. I understand that maybe there are going to be times when I have to segregate that information and keep it private, but I might also want to be able to use that equipment occasionally for personal use. So the real issue comes down to how do we balance both interests? How do we protect the employer's interests on the one hand and the employee's right to privacy on the other? And that's going to be the case whether you're using company equipment or using personal employee equipment for company use.
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients that will reimburse the employees if they don't want to get company, that second cell phone. I get it.
Yeah.
We get it. And we reimburse them for a portion of their expenses. But what happens when the cell phone gets run over by the car in the parking lot? Who's going to replace it? The employee or the employer? What happens when it's a non-exempt employee and the individual's working outside of standard work hours because the email and like I said, contracts and different things are coming through on personal time, and they're, I don't know as the employer that they're working, but yet they are because it's easily accessible and it's not on the proper piece of equipment.
Well, the way business is done nowadays, everyone wants an answer in 10 minutes,
Oh gosh,
we
instant gratification.
We know you have email on your phone. Why didn't you respond?
Right.
So, but if that's on your own personal time, if this is your own personal cell phone and you're just like, I'm off the clock, I guess you can have just a no email policy after 6 o'clock or whatever, I guess.
Well, and that's
There's key.
You're starting to talk about one of the big solutions, if you can call it that, to this issue, and managing expectations up front is critical. If I'm the employee, I'm going to want to see that company policy, which describes what I can and cannot use a particular device for. What are the lines that the company is drawing? If I'm forced to work on the computer, my own computer at home at 12 o'clock at night, and I'm a non-exempt employee, eligible for overtime, I'm going to get paid for that.
Yeah.
I want to be paid for that. I should be paid for that.
Right.
And I'm going to, make sure that happens. So what are the expectations up front? Policy is critical, and communicating that to employees. The other thing I like when you have a BYOD policy, you want to probably have an agreement for the employee to sign, just a set of expectations that they review and sign and say, here's what I'm going to do in exchange for being allowed to use my personal device for work-related uses. Here are the expectations that the company's placed on me, and I'm agreeing to those. That way it's all up front. We've had a chance to go through it. I can ask any questions about those expectations before I sign off on it, and we have a document we can always go back to. So that's a good step.
And remember, remote workers are also very likely going to use their own printers, their own scanners, because they don't have any access. So it goes even beyond office equipment. So I really encourage my employers, look, this is part of doing business, provide all the equipment, but then take an inventory and make sure that you know specifically what model, or have a inventory sticker on the item. And then at the time of termination or separation, we're collecting all that back specifically. And again, off of a written agreement saying, look, it needs to be back in proper condition. Or you understand that we're going to sit down with you and we're going to go through and make sure that this is completely cleaned and that we're retaining all of our proprietary information.
Are there any legal issues if it's their own personal machine? Can they demand legally to be able to look at your machine?
The employer?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And would that have to be agreed to up front?
Just Karl said.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, every employee has a privacy right. By law, that's the default. And so, but that privacy right can be diminished or can be reduced by an agreement or by a policy where the employer says, we'll let you use this, but realize that there's no expectation of privacy over the use of that device. We have the right to access it for any reason.
Well, especially if it's a company-issued device. I don't think you have any expectation of privacy if it's on a company computer.
You actually might.
Huh.
But every company policy really needs to talk about privacy and explain that, if it, regardless of whether it's an employee-owned or a company-owned device, that the company may have an opportunity to inspect it for certain reasons, and that certain things may not be private that you would otherwise consider to be. So again, it's part of those expectations up front, and I think the idea of a policy and an agreement with the employee helps to explain what those restrictions and limitations would be going forward.
Okay, makes sense.
Transparency is good. You don't want to blindside anybody.
No. No, and I think if you're working on a company computer, you should only do work on that. I mean, you really shouldn't be using it for personal, running your own personal side business or any of that
that's
sort of
a whole
thing,
different.
right?
That's a whole different conversation.
Moonlighting using company equipment is another issue,
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. Although there are companies who don't mind it if on your own time during lunch hour or something you're using company equipment for personal use. Sometimes that's useful. It helps people develop skills online that. Searching skills, whatever, if those are relevant to the job, that might be a reason you want to encourage that. But generally speaking, you're right. I think that would typically be limited or restricted entirely.
Yeah. Or how about taking classes, going to school and using your company computer to use it for continuing your education and that sort of thing, even though it might not be necessarily sanctioned, specifically, or being paid for by your employer. I mean, a lot of people, they just need a device to be able to do those online classes.
Oh my gosh, everything is done online now. I mean, even enrollment for benefits is done online, and normally is done on company time. So, most employers will probably be ecstatic if they're doing their education on their company computer.
Yeah. As long as it's not why they're supposed to be doing something else.
Right.
Hey, I'm paid for 8 hours. I guess I'll do my class all day.
That's a management issue.
And if I have my, and if I have that goal in mind, best thing for me as an employee to do is sit down with the employer and say, hey, here's what I want to do. I'd like to take this class. It, I think, will help me progress in my job. Yeah. But I'm going to need the company equipment, or I'm going to need to be able to use certain software that you've issued to me for doing this, for working on the class homework. Again, from an employee's perspective, that upfront expectation is important too. So, as Pandy said, transparency.
Yeah.
Now we've focused mostly on electronics like computers and cell phones, but remember, bring your own device can also be tools, especially in the construction, HVAC, handyman. So employers need to be very, very cognizant of the condition of those tools if they're going to allow the employees to use them themselves, make in the agreement any replacement or enhancements, updating equipment, that kind of stuff. That's all very, very, very important, but it's a very serious subject.
Great information. Karl, Pandy, this is, again, another one of those topics that owners of businesses need to really pay attention to. So, you've been watching Business Talk, brought to you by the Sharonville Chamber of Commerce. I'm Britt Scarce with Emory Federal Credit Union. Till next time, we'll see you right here.